The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
One, two, three. One. All right. I have no idea what that did. All right. We will start over.
The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Yaron Brook Show. Sorry for that technical problem. I have no idea what happened there. I'm glad I got to fix it. Anyway, soundboard did not work right. Not sure. Must have hit a button accidentally that silenced it, but it wasn't muted. Anyway, doesn't matter. Welcome, and I hope everybody's having a great beginning of your weekend. And thank you for joining me. All right, let's take a look. Yes. So today I wanted to talk about a piece that I discovered yesterday. It was published yesterday in Quillette. Quillette is kind of a right of center a magazine published, I think, by Australians, but it's online, so it doesn't really matter where it comes from. Anyway, it was published yesterday by John Aziz, and the title of the piece is The Destructivists, Wokeism Turns to System Destruction. So it's a piece that's trying to explain kind of what's next with wokeism. How does wokeism evolve? What is happening with wokeism right now? And generally, I think it's trying to explain American political culture, both on the left and on the right, and we'll get into that. And I think it's an honest attempt. It's a straightforward attempt to do that. I also think it's missing out on a lot. It gets a lot right, but it falls short, and it falls short quite a bit on where you'd expect it to fall short, and that is on the philosophy. So the piece is building on something Tyler Cowen, the economist, and Richard Hanania, the public intellectual, have written. I mean, Cowen's thesis, which he published around 2022, was that wokeism had peaked. You remember peak wokeism? I think at the time I agreed with him. And, he talked about it in the narrow, he talked about it in the fact that, look, DI is in retreat. Universities have gotten more cautious. Pronoun mandates are going away from federal agencies, particularly, since Trump. Corporate equity reports over the last year and a half, 2 years, have mostly been quietly shelved. ESG is, less of an issue. Generally, the outer signs of wokeism, kind of the way wokeism expressed itself at its peak, things like land acknowledgements and cancellations and mandatory trainings, a lot of that has lost momentum. A lot of that is actually gone. It's not gone completely. It's still there under the surface, and in some cases changed its name, but the energy behind it has gone. And even just if you follow some leftist accounts, it's not what they're talking about right now. Now, Karen has revised that, has come back and revised that and says, he's worried that the energy, while it disappeared from that focus, it didn't go away. He's argued that the successor to wokeism, and this he's done recently, isn't, even socialism, right? He's argued that it's really changed. It's become much more focused on socialism. Hanania puts it this way, right? Quote, I would much rather have to remember lots of weird pronouns than see the economy destroyed by socialism. So he's ranking the harms, I guess, and you could argue whether that's right or not. But the idea is the energy behind wokeism has gone into an energy advocate for socialism, and you can certainly see a lot of kind of advocacy, at least explicitly, for socialism. But Aziz, who I think is right on this, goes a little further. He says, what's really replacing wokeism isn't even socialism. Socialism at least had a program. Socialism at least believes in building stuff, right? If you go back to Marxism believes in progress. The socialists want to own factories, the means of production. They want to produce. They want to plan it. They want to centrally plan it. And we know what the outcome is. But there's a vision. It's a wrong vision. It is a catastrophic vision. It's a horrible vision. But there's a vision. But what woke has morphed into is not a vision of a socialist world of owning the means of production, building, and even in the name of equality, but building something. No. What wokeism has evolved into is this idea that Aziz is calling destructivism. Again, I don't think a real word, but anyway, a real concept. We'll talk about what I think is really it means. That is, the conviction that the most necessary and virtuous act right now is demolishing the system. Demolishing the system that wokeism has told you forever is oppressive. You don't want to tinker with it. You don't want to build. You don't want to grow. You want to destroy. So what Aziz is identifying is, if you will, to put it, I think, in more objective terms, what he's identifying is the morphing of wokeism into a more explicit form of nihilism. And I think it was always nihilistic. We'll talk about that. But now into a much more explicit. So hate the billionaires, stop them, take their stuff, not for some, socialist utopia, but in the name of hating on the rich, in the name of, as we'll see, envy. So he's identified something. He's identified something important. The explicit nihilism And he's described in an essay, which I encourage you to read. I think it's good. It's in the Quillette. I think you need a subscription. I'm not sure, but you can check it out. It's again published yesterday. Quillette is a good journal. There's a lot interesting, and Aziz, is an interesting writer and writes stuff. So it's worth talking. It's worth subscribing. Thomas says, one of the expressions of this is take for the billionaires, take for the trillionaires. He says, calling them all the Epstein class, right? The producers of the Epstein class. It's to destroy. It's not to build. There's no building up. So, I think what he's done is important, right? He's identified something important. He's described the symptoms. But what he can't do, and what he hasn't done, is explain where destructivism comes from, because then he'd have to explain where wokeism comes from. No, he does. He talks about wokeism in the sense of its institutional foundations at the universities and what they teach. But where did that come from? How did that, what are the philosophical origins and why does it work? What makes wokeism appealing intellectually to so many, and particularly to the intellectual class? And then what necessitates, I would argue, wokeism becoming more and more and more explicitly nihilistic, which is what it has. And crucially, I think if you go beyond wokeism, if you go beyond the left, why is exactly the same pathology? Nihilism. Really, this destructivism, the wanting to destroy. Why is the same pathology that runs through the left, the woke, what used to be the woke left, which is now just the left? Why is that same destructivism in the new right? It really now is dominating so much of our politics. I mean, why is, hatred and wanting to tear down and wanting to pull down and wanting to destroy, wanting to destruct? Why is that a common theme in our politics? So I think if we really think about this, it's all grounded in the same philosophy. The fundamental motivation for these ideas, the fundamental motivation for wokeism and for the new left, and as well as the new right, is ultimately a combination of altruism and a rejection of reason, manifesting themselves in envy and nihilism. So let's talk about that. Let's break that down. Let's break that down in terms of how it affects. And let's start with altruism, because altruism is so obvious, particularly across kind of what was woke. What's the moral premise that underlies wokeism? And remember, wokeism is what the new left was. It was this idea of identity politics, cancel culture, but really underlying it was this idea that of the oppressor and the oppressed. And the oppressed were, by definition, the good guys, and the oppressor, bad guys by the name, right? The oppressed, by definition, were the unsuccessful, were the poor, were people who have not done well. The oppressor, by definition, were the successful in any particular realm in life. So the successful were evil, the successful were oppressors, the unsuccessful were the good, and what the demand was, the demand of the entire woke project is, and as we'll see, the entire project of the New Left is the sacrifice of the successful to the unsuccessful, the sacrifice of the good to the not so good, or to the downright evil in some cases, the downright evil. And more than really even focusing on who the target of the sacrifice should be, woke spends a lot of time, as does the entire New Left program, on identifying who should be the sacrificers. Right now, it's that trillionaire and those billionaires. It's Israel. It's America, the United States more broadly. It's Western civilization. Anybody associated with Western civilization. So they know who the sacrificers should be. One second. And that's altruism. Altruism, as you know, many of you know anyway, is not being nice to people. It's not about benevolence. Benevolence is fine. But that's not what the doctrine actually advocates for. The doctrine is a doctrine of individual sacrifice. It holds that the individual's life does not belong to himself. It belongs to the other, the group, the collective, fundamentally. And in the context of particularly the New Left and woke, to the suffering, to the oppressed, to those who have not. Your life is not yours to live for your happiness. Your life is to be sacrificed for the cause. Fill in the blank of the cause. That is the essence of altruism. Your moral worth is measured by how much you sacrifice, and it's not clear there is enough, ever. Think about the ultimate sacrifice. Jesus on a cross. Pretty brutal. So, Marxism wants you to sacrifice for the proletarian. The tribe wants you to sacrifice for the tribe. Nationalism for the state. Identity politics, sacrifice for your race. Altruism is about group identity almost by definition, because there's somebody. It could be religious. You could be sacrificing for God, but once you bring it down to earthly sacrifices, who are you sacrificing to? Some group. It's almost never an individual, and this is why identity politics arises out of this. So for altruism, what matters is the group. And what matters is the relative success or failure, the relative suffering or success of the group. You as an individual don't matter, certainly not if you're an individual of the successful group. And of course, as a consequence of that, altruism is constantly focused on what? On sacrifice. Now, as a consequence, what is it not focused on? It's not focused on production. It's not focused on building. It's not focused on creation. The reality is production, building, creation, those are primarily, virtues of somebody focused on their own life, somebody trying to fulfill something for themselves. Sacrifice is about destroying your own values. It's not about building. Sacrifice devours. it doesn't create. And this is why socialism always fails, because it's built in a system of devouring stuff, not building stuff. I mean, altruism can be used to redistribute, to take, but it can't be used to organize for production. It's all about taking what is being produced. It's all about, in that sense, destroying. So it's not surprising that a woke ideology built on altruism can only go towards destruction, can only go towards nihilism, to the destruction of values. Values are individual. Values are things that an individual pursue to make their lives, in one way or the other, better, or at least that is their intent. Whether they've thought them out completely or not, the intent is, I want that. Why? Because I think it'll make my life better. Altruism says you can't do that. If you think that's going to make your life better, shun it and turn towards making somebody else's life better. So destructiveness, or destructivism, as Aziz uses it, he views it as a mutation of wokeism, as the next step. As a mutation of it, not as a next step, but not as an inevitable next step. But it's really a logical conclusion. It really is the next step. I mean, you can redistribute and redistribute, but all redistribution is a destruction. I mean, altruism necessitates that, I sacrifice for you, you sacrifice for the next guy, they sacrifice for the next. I mean, where does it end? And who's the beneficiary? And who is better off? And nobody can be better off, because as soon as they have to sacrifice. And the producer is by definition an exploiter, is by definition a success. So he must sacrifice and he must be oppressed. So it necessitates the altruism, the logic of woke, the logic of oppressor-oppressed, of intersectionality, is the destruction of anything good around us. It's the destruction of production. It's the destruction of the good. It's the destruction of success. It's the destruction of progress. Think about the degrowth economists. I mean, the degrowth economists didn't come out of nowhere. They've come out of what's the next thing that altruism can advocate for. We've done socialism, didn't quite work, and people don't really like socialism. We tried environmentalism. We tried to scare the bejesus out of them so they would sacrifice for the planet. Most people don't want to sacrifice for the planet. They like their automobiles. They like their jet travel around the world. They don't want to sacrifice for the planet. We tried to get them to sacrifice to the next group. Now we just need to get them to sacrifice for the sake of sacrifice. We just need to stop growing. We're back, sacrifice for the poor and for the planet, and for the racial groups and for everything all at once. We need to stop going and just massively redistribute whatever we have. So they've embraced the destruction of production. They've embraced their own nihilism. And this is why, if you look at all of these new left, right, they march for Hamas. They march for Hezbollah. They march to end growth. What are they marching for? What is their positive program? What do they want to actually do once they've destroyed and redistributed and taken and oppressed? So there's no There's no positive program that the new left has. What do they want? What do they want for the Palestinians? What kind of life did they want the Palestinians to have? What kind of world did they want the Palestinians to live in? What kind of society did they want the Palestinians to build? They don't. They don't care. The only thing they want is to destroy Israel. You know, what kind of economic system do they want that will produce the goodies, will produce life on Mars, a moon station? What do they want to do with, Elon Musk's trillions if they could just get their grubby hands on it? What would they do with all that money? They would redistribute it to a bunch of people who would consume it and it would go away, disappear. And production would halt because all this, you'd suck away all the investment and savings in the economy. And they know this, they're all economists. And what is their solution for that? Degrowth. We'll eliminate growth and we'll start shrinking growth. We'll have negative growth. We'll be on a path to destruction. But that's okay, because everybody will be equal or in a world, or we will have destroyed the bad guys. Of course, every time, every society, they will invent new bad guys. They'll invent new people that they want to destroy. If you've ever, read about the Khmer Rouge, and first it was people who lived in the cities, then it was people who wore glasses, then it was people who had an education, and there was people who could, who showed any sign of any ability. Those had to be destroyed. At every level, there was more destruction happening, because to achieve any kind of a true egalitarian outcome, it just means killing a lot of people, destroying a lot of stuff. And that's what motivates them. They're fueled by altruism, which leads to egalitarianism, which leads to nihilism. Just tear stuff down. Tear stuff down. That's all they want. It's all they desire. It's all they strive for. Now, think about how intersectionality has really embedded these altruistic ideas, embedded it into wokeism. Remember, intersectionality is this idea that we rank people by how much we believe that they are oppressed, and that the more oppressed they are, the more we should sacrifice for them. It's not even that they're virtuous; it's the deserving of our sacrifice. And the less oppressed we are, I don't know, in their language, white male Wall Street billionaire, right? The more evil you are, and the more your sacrifice is required, demanded, needed right now. That's their whole ideology, and that's just pure altruism, pure Christian altruism through a lens of kind of postmodern secularism, secularized Christianity. But altruism, of course, doesn't arise. This kind of altruism, this vicious kind of altruism, doesn't really arise in a vacuum. It has a foundation, a philosophical foundation. The ability to undermine individualism rests on undermining the basis for individualism to begin with. And this is really the role of epistemology, the role of the system of thought that tells us how we know what we know. And if you think about the foundation for individualism, what individualism rests on, individualism rests on the idea that reason is our means, a tool of cognition. It is our means of knowing the world. It is our only means of knowing the external world. And reason is a faculty of the individual. And in that sense, it is what provides the individual with the ability to survive, to have values, to pursue values. I have the capacity to know the world. I have the capacity to understand the world. The entire Enlightenment, the real intellectual revolution that produced freedom, capitalism, science, founding fathers, is built on the bedrock of really one insight. Every individual has the capacity to look at the world and understand it. The capacity. Every person, using their own mind, can reach the truth and therefore can choose their values and can live by them. You don't need a king or a pope, a preacher, to tell you what the truth is or how to live. You don't need a priest to reveal reality to you. You have a mind, use it. That is the fundamental message of the Enlightenment. And we have the tool. And look at the scientific revolution. We demonstrate the tool. We show how it's used. That idea of reason as individual sovereignty is what makes individual sovereignty possible. Again, if you don't have reason, if you can't tell what the truth is, if you can't choose your own values, manage your own life, then you are dependent. You're dependent on authorities. You need somebody to tell you how to live. We don't have, everybody agrees, not everybody, but many agree we don't have the code for how to live our lives embedded in us, programmed in us. We need either to figure it out or we need somebody to tell us what it is. And the reality, of course, is we don't have that code, so we need somebody to tell us what it is. So the rejection of authority that imposes its will on you, is the achievement of the Enlightenment. It is why the Enlightenment produced individualism and therefore individual rights and a political system of liberty. But what happens when you say reason? Reason doesn't lead to truth. Reason is completely impotent, which is exactly what the postmoderns do. And this is the philosophy that flooded Western universities starting in the 1970s. And Nikos and I will do a show on postmodernism, so we'll dig deeper into postmodernism in a future episode. But postmodernism did exactly this. It aimed directly at the idea of truth. They said, reason doesn't work. What you call knowledge is just your perspective. All knowledge is subjective in a sense. And your position in the social hierarchy, your lived experience, primarily your group's lived experience, your collective lived experience, is what ultimately determines, what you perceive as true. There's no objective reality. At least there's no objective reality accessible to you, to any individual mind. I mean, this is straight out of Kant, if you will, but massaged through a century, more than a century. So for the postmodernists, all there is power structure, intersectionality. And those power structures determine whose truth gets treated as true, whose truth is right. But note, it's all collectivist. It's all group. It's all your group's lived experience, your group's power, the power you get from the group you belong to, the tribe you belong to. Now, this is not just, some people talk about what's going on in universities as a mood, an attitude. No, this is philosophy. This is philosophy that has consequences. If you cannot access reality, if your mind cannot access reality, then you as an individual, you can't be sovereign. You can't be sovereign. You can't choose your own values. Your life is not yours. At least you can't survive even if it is yours. You need the group. You depend on the group. Or you need some source from which to derive values, to which to know what to do, to derive knowledge. Whether it's the group or an authority that tells you. You need authority. You need someone to commune with the world of spirits, the spirit of what do you call them, of the proletarian, or the spirit of the Aryan race, or the spirit of whites, or the spirit of blacks, or the spirit of the oppressed, or the spirit of trans, whatever it is. Somebody who communes with the spirit of the oppressed to know what is needed, who needs to be sacrificed, to whom. You can't figure out truth. And the result of this is the development, just like in religion. When you undermine reason, when you elevate faith, you then need a class of priests to tell you what the faith demands of you, because you don't know. How do you know? How many of you commune with God? None of you, I take it. So somebody has to. How many of you could really understand what the, Bible says, what God means? So somebody has to tell you. Your reason can't, because this is not about reality. This is about God, about faith, about the opposite of reality. So you need a priestly class to tell you, and the left, during the wokeism period. I mean, we had the priestly class. We had the professors and the activists and the DI administrators and the new priests. So postmodernism, has so many of the features of religion. It creates the same kind of impotence of the individual and mindlessness of the individual. Because what's the point of a mind when you can't reason? So if your epistemology tells you the truth comes from your group's lived experience, and then another group's claim to knowledge are just an exercise in power, then rational argument with the other group is meaningless. It's literally impossible. It will achieve nothing. Because they have their lived experience and you have your lived experience. And now they're using power. So it's literally reasoning. Rational argument is impossible. So how do you resolve disputes? How do you resolve disputes? There's only my group's truth and their group's so-called truth, what they consider truth, their power play. Well, then it's all about power. Persuasion is out, force is in, power is in. I mean, think about the obsession of the American right with the left. It's not that they want to argue with the left and show them the left is wrong. No. I mean, the whole point of Trumpism and the whole point of particularly the new left is you can't do that. You can't talk to leftists. There's nobody there. There's no, their truth is not our truth. We get our truth from God. They get their truth from, who knows where. How are we going to reason? Neither of us are pointing to reality. The right is not pointing to reality. The left is not pointing to reality. So the only thing we have is to bash them. The only thing we have is to capture the power structures, and use it to destroy the left. And that's Trump's agenda, right? Now, I think Trump is failing. He's failing on a massive scale. I just saw today the image that is perfect to illustrate Trump's failure. And he's failing, I think, primarily because America doesn't really want that. It doesn't really want destruction of the others, just fight the other side. It doesn't want that. But the image that struck me today as an illustration of the fact that Trump is failing is the image of the Kennedy Center today, and the workers taking down Trump's name. Taking down Trump's name from the Kennedy Center. And that's like, yeah, that's it. The system in place, mostly for good, resisting Trump, stopping him from his nuttiness and destructiveness, and taking down his name from the Kennedy Center. Perfect image, perfect illustration of his unbelievable failure, really, on all fronts. I mean, yeah, that'll be another show, right? So we have a culture of unreason that, as we've talked about many times, unreason causes the individual, I don't know what's true, how do I know what's true, running to the group, needing authorities, needing people to tell him, whether it's Nick Fuentes or whether it's Paul Krugman. I need somebody to tell me what the truth is. Joseph Stiglitz and the degrowthers. Krugman is actually a little better than Stiglitz, funnily enough. And once you've accepted that reason is out, all that's left is power. Argument doesn't mean anything. What matters is force. What matters is sheer power. And where does power reside? In politics. So it's all about politics. It's all about capturing the political high ground in a sense of the pulling the strings, and using that to impose your will. And of course, an extension of that, particularly when you're out of power, is political violence. Political violence on both sides. And as Trump will fail more, the political violence on the right will rise. The political violence on the left has already risen quite a bit. And you're going to see political violence on both sides, because that's the only thing left of them. What's left? Now, luckily, these ideas are not yet in the majority, but that's where they're heading. And once reason is abandoned and altruism is embraced, what you find then is, a growing suspicion, a growing resentment, a growing hatred of success. What you find is the rise of envy. And I don't know, yesterday with Elon Musk becoming the first trillionaire, wow, envy was everywhere. Now, you didn't see it as much on the right because Elon Musk is considered of the right. So they laid off of him. But it's there on the right. It's there on the right. Wait until the Anthropic guys become gazillionaires and the OpenAI guys. Envy as hatred of the good for being the good. Hatred of success for being successful. Hatred of achievement because it's an achievement, because it's good. I mean, that's the whole woke program. It's built on envy. By definition, if you're successful, you're bad. What drives that is hatred and envy. So, what you get is abandonment of reason, the embrace of altruism, the manifestation of that in envy and in egalitarianism, in the striving for complete equality on the left, which is a flattening and just an embrace of, going after power-wise, using power to go after the left and the right. They don't embrace egalitarianism. They embrace nationalism. They embrace, a kind of, hierarchy of oppression. They embrace the oppression the left claims exists. They embrace the oppression the left condemns. They just want to be the ones on top, oppressing everybody else in the name of the state, in the name of the race, in the name of religion, depending on which version of New Right. Right. So, just egalitarianism is never, really motivated by compassion for the poor. As I've said many times in many lectures and in my books and everywhere else, if egalitarians cared about the poor, they would celebrate capitalism, because capitalism raises the poor out of poverty. But they don't. They attack achievement. What they want is to rip stuff down. They're driven by envy, and they're fundamentally nihilists. John Rawls, the philosopher, built them a pseudo-moral framework. Right? But, that's only the intellectuals use that as a rationalization for what ultimately is hatred and envy. So, whatever program the left adopts, the end of it is destructiveness. It has to lead to that. Aziz recognizes that. But the source of that, the rejection of reason, the rejection of individualism, that he cannot see. The philosophical root cause he cannot see. You don't build anything on the basis of envy. You only knock stuff down. You only knock stuff down. And of course, that is the essence of nihilism, which is what all of this boils down to. When, as an individual, values are meaningless because you don't have the capacity to choose them and yet the world is rich. There's a lot of stuff out there. But I don't have the tool to attain it. I can't judge. I'm told my judgment doesn't count. Only my group matters. And everybody should be sacrificing for the suffering, and they're not. And what is left but to, as an individual, ultimately what it boils down to is the hatred drives you to reject all values. It drives you to the belief that no values are worth living for, worth fighting for, worth building towards. That doesn't mean stopping action. I mean, if that were true, they would just lay down, and it doesn't lead to apathy. I mean, I think for some people it does. For a lot of people, it probably does. But for a lot of people, it means hatred. I'm born into a world where I cannot pursue my values. I'm born into a world where I am not allowed to pursue my happiness. I'm born into a world I cannot understand. I cannot discover truth. It's a world I want to destroy. It's a world I want to bring down. And that's what drives them. And again, this is a phenomenon of both sides. They don't want to, again, there's no, and you saw this with climate change, with environmentalism. Like, okay, let's go nuclear. Oh, no, not nuclear. Let's have carbon capture technologies. Oh, no, that's not allowed. They didn't want the solution. Their solution was destruction. Their solution was the human race going back to the caves. Destruction of progress, destruction of success. And again, you're seeing that now with, everything going on about billionaires and trillionaires and degrowth. It's just the viciousness of it all. So, when Hanania says something like, I'd rather remember a lot of weird pronouns and see the economy destroyed, I mean, he treats pronoun culture and economic destruction as some kind of thing that are different in scale of damage. A minor nuisance versus a major economic catastrophe. What you're missing is the fundamental cause of both, and that the end result has to be massive destruction. And the pronouns is just the thing he's latching onto, but it's the underlying which is much more important. It's the kind of intersectionality way of thinking about the world that generates pro-Palestinian demonstrations in America after October 7th, before Israel has done anything. The Palestinians are good, Israel is bad. That is such a great illustration. It's the perfect illustration of intersectionality, the perfect illustration of what is behind wokeism and where the energy is being funneled. And again, it's not about building up the Palestinians. It's about tearing down Israel, America, and the West. And, you know, Cohen's verdict, which is that wokeism was a relatively harmless way of distracting activists. No, it set the stage for the nihilism we're experiencing and about to experience, I think, in spades. Again, both on the right and on the left. I mean, for decades, universities systematically taught a philosophical framework for interpreting human life. Oppressors oppressed. Assign moral worth to the group membership, not individual action. Treat every existing institution as a vessel of structural violence, of oppression, of exploitation. And dismantling these structures as the highest expression of virtue. This is goodness. This is what you should be doing. Dismantling, destroying. It's not a distraction. This is a philosophical agenda that brings about destruction, nihilism, death. It brings about those student demonstrations. It brings about the shooting of a United Healthcare CEO and the support he got. It brings about the idea that it's acceptable to shoot Charlie Cook or anybody else for that matter. It legitimizes violence. It legitimizes tearing stuff down. And of course, as I said, you know, the new right is just a different manifestation of the same anti-reason, anti-individualism, pro-altruism ideology. Just instead of postmodernism, it's couched in the form of tradition, religion, the past. It's couched in terms of nationalism or Christianity, post-liberal integralism, but it's all the same thing. It's nationalism and Christianity. Those are the anchors for the right, the sources of authority, the sources of a priesthood. The left, it's group identity. Note that the right gets group identity. That is the same. They get it out of the nationalism. They get it out of the, tradition, if you will. The woke left rejects reason in favor of lived experience, group identity, and authority of the oppressed. Right? Then you right demands, gets it from where? The new right rejects reason in favor of faith, tradition, revelation, and authority of the nation or of God. And of course, whatever group identity that gives you. These aren't opposites. There's symmetrical moves, and a lot of what animates the right is to be anti-left. Now, the left are the initiators, because the left are the intellectuals, the left are the universities, the left are the bringers of new ideas, and the right is responsive. It has no new ideas. All it has is the past. They all reject reason. They all reject logic. And they all reject and destroy confidence in individual cognition. They all want to build up a priestly class. It's a different class. Right? The left demands that you sacrifice yourself to the oppressed. The new right demands that you sacrifice yourself to the nation or to God. Right? Both reject individualism, your ability to choose your own values, to figure out using reason your moral moral life. No, you can't. The left will tell you you can't. All you can do is figure out, are you oppressed, and figure out where to sacrifice. That's all you can do. The right will tell you, you have to look to God. You have to look to the nation to find your values. You don't have any. Both ultimately rely on the group to tell you what to think, to tell you what kind of life to pursue. The individual doesn't matter. The group matters for both. What makes the new right, in some sense, worse, at least for me, right? At least from me as an intellectual trying to save civilization. That's a little pretentious, but that's how I think of it, right? For me, as somebody trying to defend civilization, what makes the new right worse is they pretend that they are defending Western civilization, when what they're doing is undermining it. Just to remind you, Western civilization is an achievement of the Enlightenment. Now, they didn't do, they did a great job, but it's incomplete. It's never been fully presented, at least until Rand. But it's a huge achievement. Western civilization, as we know it, in other words, the next step in civilization, view civilization as a process. The next step in civilization was the Enlightenment, and that has birthed the modern world as we know it. And these people who want to destroy the modern world are not the defenders of civilization, Western or otherwise. Tucker Carlson is not a defender of individualism, even if sometimes he presents himself as if he is. He rejects everything about individualism. He is not a defender of America. He rejects everything that is America. He's not a defender of Western Civ. He rejects everything that is Western Civ, just like the new left does. So while the left reaches for authoritarianism from a so-called progressive perspective, I hate the fact that they have that word, the right does it from a religious perspective. They both are motivated to a large extent by fear that comes from the fact that they rejected reason, and therefore they don't know how to deal with the world. They both resort to violence because that's all that's left. All right. So Aziz ends his article with the observation that destructivism is dangerous because it has no constructive alternative. And in the culture today. And in a sense, he's right. He wants to build better guardrails, stronger institutional protections to prevent people from wrecking things. It's like, yeah, it's both of the courts. So Trump can't dismantle everything. And it's working okay. Not great, but it's working okay. As I said, Trump is failing because we have guardrails. So we want guardrails. Guardrails are good. But that can't be the solution. We're not going to be able to protect civilization long term against people who have real philosophical conviction unless we offer a positive vision, unless we offer something worth fighting for, unless we offer something worth building for, creating for. We must fight for the idea that the individual's life belongs to him. Your life is yours. It does not belong to the group, the collective. Your life is not to be sacrificed for any group, for any mystical being, for any greater thing than yourself. The nation is not more important than you. The tribe is not more important than you. To you. The individual needs to be taught. We need to teach. We need to yell from the, argue for, not yell. Argue from the rooftops. That your life is yours. Live it with a capital L. Live it. We have to identify self-interest. Identify egoism. We mustn't qualify it. We mustn't soften it. We must confront altruism. Challenge it. Why should I live for other people? My life is mine. I have only this one life. That's it. I want it to mean something. I want it to be a happy life. So collectivism needs to be confronted head on. Altruism needs to be confronted head on. And to do that, an alternative must be presented. Individual human happiness. The right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. The moral right to live for your own sake, your own flourishing. That's what must be advocated for. That is the system. That is the alternative to the destructiveness. The builder mentality, as I think Gina Golan would call it. The builder mentality. I have values. I want to bring those values into the world. I want to create them. I want to pursue them. I want to achieve them. And to do all that, we must defend the mind. We must defend reason. We must defend reason, our mind's ability to access reality, to discover truth, to know stuff in a time of explosion of science and engineering. I mean, it should be easy. Look at how efficacious the human mind is. Everything flows from this. Everything. The idea that we can take care of ourselves, pursue our own values, live our own lives, requires that we have a mind that can discover truth, discover values. The idea that we don't need authority, don't need priestly classes of left or right, means that we are sovereign individuals with a mind, with a reasoning capacity. And we have to teach it, model it, defend it. We have to become the defenders of egoism and reason. That's what it's all about. Egoism, reason. Egoism, reason. It's a philosophical struggle. The left has morphed into what their ideas necessitated. Pure nihilism. The right had no ideas. So it resurrected old ideas. Religion, nationalism, and a variety of different guises. And that has to morph into the same thing. Nihilism. Destruction of what is good. Destruction of the individual. Destruction of production. There is no other outcome possible from a commitment to nationalism and religion. We have to offer an alternative. An alternative has to be reason and individualism. I think they can be defended. They have to be defended. They have to be philosophically defended. And there's no better time to start doing that than right now. Right now. All right, that is my spiel for this Saturday, June 15th, on Aziz's article. I recommend you find it and read it. I think it's definitely worth reading. I think he's an interesting writer. He writes regularly about a variety of different cultural issues. John Aziz on Quillette. Quillette.com. That's Quillette. Right of center publication, made its name really being a place that was very anti-woke. One of the first to identify kind of what was going on the left in the early 2000s, in the 20 teens, and then into the 2020s. So why are people writing in all caps? Can we stop writing in all caps? It's distracting. I don't know. All right. Great. I want to remind you all that tomorrow we've got another show with Nikos. It's going to be on, in some sense, there is a real spark. Is Aziz an Arabic name? Not only is it an Arabic name, I think he's a Palestinian. And yet, on these issues, he's good. I mean, he's not an objectivist, and he's lacking a lot. We filled it in a little bit for him today, but he's pretty good. He's pretty good. Just shows you that you are not a product of your of the genetic makeup of the origin of which you came from, of the nationality of which you belong. You are a product of your own thinking or lack of it. If you don't think, you become a product of the culture in which you were raised. All right, let me remind you all that these shows are funded through the support from people like you, and we have goals for each one of these shows, and we try to reach those goals, exceed those goals to basically fund the creation of the show, expenses, my time primarily, but other expenses, assistant, editor, and so on. So please consider supporting the show. You can support the show on a monthly basis, as many of you do, on patreon.com, you can become a monthly contributor there. There are perks associated with different levels. At $10, you get the podcast, the audio version with no commercials. At $25, you get to participate on the video panel at the AMA on a monthly basis. At $250, you get a one-on-one with me every 3 months. At $500, one-on-one with me every month. So please consider supporting the show. Becoming a monthly contributor, as I've said many times, it's a great way for me because it's very predictable. Those of you on here live, those of you on YouTube, those of you not on YouTube, come on over to YouTube, and on YouTube you can participate in supporting the show by making a contribution. And what did I do? Sorry. Making a contribution here on the show, you could do a sticker, which is where you don't ask a question, you just make a monetary contribution as support, value for value, or you can ask a question, and then I talk about the things you want me to talk about, right? So please consider doing that, your support funds these deeper dives, but they also fund the Nikos show. They fund the news shows, and again, you can fund all those things here on the super chat or sticker, or you can fund them through a monthly contribution on PayPal or on Patreon. Just put in Yaron Brook Show. All right, we got a few stickers. Ryan, thank you. Whoops, what's going on? Ryan and Florida Nick. Let's see, there weren't that many. Catherine from Europe and Mike Dial. And that's it. Those are the stickers. I think I got everybody. Apologize if I missed somebody. I think I got everybody. You can still jump in with the stick at any time. We do have some questions. Michael has put in $100 for 2 questions. Thank you, Michael. Maybe more, because he's got a few $5 questions as well. So 115 today. Thank you, Michael. But he is like carrying the full load here. He's got half of all the money raised so far. It's just Michael. So please consider coming in and supporting the show as well. Again, whether with a sticker or a question about anything about what we talked about today, about anything else that you might want me to comment on, happy to do it. Thank you, Jason, for the sticker. Thank you, Dale. Really appreciate that. And Dale, that was your 5th super chat. So congratulations. Congratulations. All right, let's start with Michael. Michael says, we tend to view the left as the paternalistic party that treats people like children, while the right stands for independence and personal responsibility. But doesn't the right today have the same philosophical, kind, paternalistic mindset as the left? Yes. And to some extent it always has, as long as the right is associated with religion. I mean, religion is very paternalistic. Religion, you need commandments. You need a set of rules and guidelines to know how to live that is dictated from above. You don't have to understand them. Don't bother your pretty little mind to understand why you have to do these things. Just know that you have to do it. It's a requirement. So the right has, I mean, the whole set of commandments and authoritarian restrictions that religion places on us is a form of paternalism. You cannot succeed in life. You cannot be a good person unless you do this. And I'm not going to explain it to you. I'm not going to tell you why, what the logic is, because, yeah, you're basically too dumb to know, and your reason is not, and it's not really based on reality anyway. So I'm just going to dictate it. So there's a strong paternalistic flavor to the right, and really to religion, and always has me, right? The whole notion of a priest, not a priest as a guide who teaches you about morality, guides you, helps you understand, helps you, figure out the behaviors that are appropriate and inappropriate based on nature and based on rationality, and explains it to you. No, a priest that can forgive you, a priest that can tell you what to do, a priest that can grant you, X number of Hail Marys so that you can get away with the sin you've committed. A priest that can explain the books to you, but not explain again as an appeal to reason. Explain as an appeal to authority. This is what it means. Priests do not typically engage in the Socratic method of trying to tease it out of you and engage in conversation. They engage in sermons and reading from the text, which you are supposed to accept as the word of God, and therefore as a must do. So, I mean, look, a lot of our perceptions about what the left and the right are wrong. Because the right for a while, and even Ayn Rand held this, is the term right was associated with protective individualism, protective individual rights, protective the American system of government. Even if they did it badly and they did it with lots of flaws, that was the central nature of the right. But I think that was a mistake. If I said that to Ayn Rand, I wonder what she'd convince me I'm wrong. But I think it was a mistake in the sense of that whether you like it or not, in the mind of the culture, the Nazis on the right, fascism is on the right. And there is no continuum from individual rights and the protection of liberty to Nazism. There's no we're right of a certain type and they're right of a different type. And to say, yeah, that's a mistake, the Nazis are really on the left, which is true in some sense, is futile. It's just you're fighting against a culture that's already defined its terms in this way. And right and left are not terms like selfishness that are worth fighting for. They're just not that important. Right per se signifies nothing. It signifies where a certain political party sat to the right of the king versus those or the right versus those on the left in post-revolution France. But it wasn't, if they sat in that direction, they were for individual rights. They weren't. In that context, there was nobody who was for individual rights. So, yeah, I mean, the whole idea of left and right is gone. It's the right and the left today, as manifest today, are different manifestations of collectivism and irrationalism, and at the extremes of nihilism. Michael, every time the government interferes in the economy, it reduces the ability of productive people to coordinate. It's designated to force people away from mutual beneficial relationships for nihilistic reasons. Well, I mean, I think sometimes it's nihilistic reasons, or sometimes it's delusional reasons. It's people thinking that they can do better than the market. It's people thinking that they can centrally plan, that they can impose their will on the market, that there's a better alternative, that there's some algorithm that they can use that results in a better outcome in some way. And, so sometimes their motives are delusional, evasive, but maybe not nihilistic. Not everybody who disagree with us, not everybody who's a central planner is a nihilist. There are people in center left and center right who are certainly not nihilistic, who still want to tinker with the market wrongly, mistakenly, but I wouldn't call them nihilistic. But it's absolutely true that when they do, outside of the legitimate function of government, now remember, we're not anarchists, so we believe government does interfere with markets sometimes when, for example, people in the marketplace are violating rights, or when it's necessary to step in order to help define what the rights are, not create them, define them. So government has a role in the marketplace. Its role is never involves violating rights. Sometimes it involves helping to define them, and certainly involves defending them. But you're absolutely right that it interferes with the ability of productive people to coordinate, and it basically eliminates the ability to us to find mutually agreeable solutions. It makes us poorer. It makes us less free. It is a travesty. I wish people were as upset about violations of, our property rights, our rights of association, our rights of trade, to trade, as they are about things like freedom of speech. We need all our rights. We don't want to be selective about them. All right, Wes, thank you for the $50 sticker. Really, really appreciate that. And thank you, Stephen Harper, for the sticker. Really appreciate that. All right. Stephen Johnson, I know a lot of Ayn Rand fans like the band Rush. Just want to report I was lucky enough to see them in LA on the first night of their new tour. Excellent show. They are still masters of their craft and still playing songs influenced by Rand. That's great. I know Jennifer is heading out to see them in, I can't remember, was it Cincinnati or somewhere? Not in Michigan. But she's going out. Tickets are not cheap, but she's a huge fan. So Jennifer's going to see the concert. She's going with Robert. I think she's going with Robert. So I think Robert is also going to see Rush. So yeah, Rush there are a lot of fans, and I know they're on a tour. So Cleveland, she's going to see them in Cleveland. So check out the tour schedule, and go see them. If you are a Rush fan, if Rush brought you to Objectivism, to Ayn Rand, or didn't, but you're just really passionate about Rush, don't miss the opportunity, right? Values, right? Money is for spending. Robert is going with his wife, Amy. So Robert, Amy, and Jennifer are going to be at the Cleveland concert. And Robert and Amy also going to be in Detroit, maybe? I seem to remember that, maybe. Anyway, go see them. It's one of those things that it's a once in a lifetime, probably. given who knows if they'll have a reunite again. And I'm all for experiences. Life is about experiences. It's about experiencing stuff. It's about pursuing your values. It's about attaining your values. No, I misspoke. They're not going to Detroit. They're only going to Cleveland. Right? Thomas says, damn, I need to get people to pay $900 to hear me. Yeah, I know classical music doesn't generate, although, opera tickets are expensive. Opera tickets are not cheap. They're not $900 a pop, but they are, which is what the Rush concert is, but they are not cheap. But it does tell you something about the culture when you can go see an opera for a third of what it costs and get the best seats for a third of what to see a rock concert, even if it is the best rock in the world. All right, thank you, Stephen. That is very cool. I'm glad you got an opportunity. That's Stephen Johnson. Thank you. Frank, $50, another 50. Oh, you guys are great today. Thank you. Really appreciate that. We're only 100 away from achieving our second hour goal, primarily because of Michael, Stephen, and Frank, who all did $50. So only $100 of achieving our second hour goal. We're well into our second hour. So 5 $20 questions would get us there. So please consider that. Also, stickers can help. I see Roman has done a sticker, so thank you, Roman. So yeah, $96 away from achieving that. It wouldn't take much given how many people are watching right now live. Let's see. Frank, actually relevant, he says. Everything's relevant. Geneva is preparing for anarchist trouble with the upcoming G7 conference. A beautiful city that has suffered from anarchist riots before, destructiveness with the excuse of targeting the political class. Yes, I mean, look, I think the whole anarchist program, anarchist on the right, anarchist on the left, anarchist on the communist side, anarchist on the supposedly pretense of capitalism side, anarchism is ultimately a nihilistic project, even though I think a lot of good people get captured by it. It's ultimately a nihilistic project, and the best exemplar of the anarchists who go to these G7 conferences, or if you remember, the first real big anti-trade movement was the leftist, anarchist, anti-trade riots during the World Trade Organization meetings. I think, was it 98 or 99 in Seattle? But there were others, and yeah, it's brutal. It's and they are vicious, and they are all about destruction. Again, anarchy doesn't build anything. You build something on the basis of what? Anarchy is just whatever. And the whatever is often just whim. And whim is emotion. And if you don't build it on a foundation of reason, if you don't build life on a foundation of reason, then whim is destruction. Well, whim is emotion is destruction. So yes, anarchy is not a system of creation and production. It's a system of destruction. And the anarchists in Geneva, it's going to be horrible. And you're right, Geneva is a beautiful place, very expensive, but partially because it's expensive, it is beautiful. It is a beautiful place on the river, on the Lake Geneva, with the Alps in the background, yeah, I really, really enjoy going to Geneva, walking along the lake, great food, just an exciting place. It's going to be very sad. All right. Linda. We're $90. 90. We've got, I don't know, a few minutes, not a lot, because there are not a lot of questions today, so chime on in with a question. Linda says, I just discovered Leonard Peikoff's lectures, Poems I Love and Why. Yeah, he did that at a conference I organized in 1999 at Lyceum. I was there live. It was, I was running the conference. It was a great conference and great lectures. An absolute delight. Some of the poems I knew, she says, and some were new to me. Highly recommended. I will second, third, fourth, whatever needed. I mean, generally, anything Linda Peacock does worth listening to. And those were real pleasures. They were real fun. Leonard lights up when he's doing aesthetics. I mean, his passion, his love of life really comes through when he was talking about great plays, and when he was talking about sculpture he loves, and of course when he was talking about poems he loves. And this was a great illustration of that. It was from 1999 in Grand Labakan, for those of you who were there. Thomas Schubatum says, "You and lovely Pam Benson." Yeah, but on that one, Pam abandoned me. I mean, not of her own fault. Her husband Pam was my business partner when I ran Lyceum, and we would put on these conferences, including the summer conferences at Tadeo Okan. And in those days, they were much longer. They were almost 2 weeks. The one in '99 was almost 2 weeks. And Pam's husband had a burst appendix and had to be rushed to the emergency room for surgery, and so she couldn't come. So I was left to run that conference all by my lonesome. And it was a challenging conference for reasons one day I will tell you, but that are part of objectivist history and not yet. Part of the sealed part of the archives for now. But it was a challenging conference, but it was also a great conference. Leonard's course was fantastic, the poems. There were other presentations that were really good, some not so good. And then there was I got offered the job of being CEO of the Ayn Rand Institute at that conference. That conference also turned my world upside down. I was about to leave academia and to enter full-time into the land of finance and be full-time in the hedge fund world. I was about to become rich. Well, I thought so anyway. And I got offered this job, and the question was money or run the Ayn Rand Institute. And this is the 1999 conference, and you reminded me of this, Linda, so I'm sorry I'm going off topic. And I chose, without completely giving up on the money, because I stayed involved in the hedge fund, but I was going to go full time. That was going to be what I did. I did the hedge fund, maybe continued with Lyceum, organizing conferences, but that was it. I was not going to do any intellectual activity beyond that. And the offer from the Institute was just too good to say no to, and that changed the trajectory of my life completely. I'd be a lot richer now, but we wouldn't have the Yaron Brook show probably. So my life would be completely different, and I'm kind of happy, proud to say that some of your lives would be completely different, because I know that some of your lives were changed because I made that choice. All right, that's 99. Thanks for bringing up those memories, Linda. All right, Roman, thank you for the sticker. Gail, thank you for the sticker. Tessa, thank you for the sticker. Really appreciate it, guys. We're doing great. We're only $31 away from reaching our goal. Shazbat, yes, King and Country. Without a doubt, my favorite magazine. Strong, soft, and thoroughly absorbent. That's from Blackadder. Blackadder goes forth. Which season is that? Which season? I'm assuming is that season, the last season, season 4, World War I. But yes. Yes, King and Country. Without a doubt, my favorite magazine, strong and soft and thoroughly absorbent. That sounds like World War I, season 4. One of my favorite shows of all time, funniest shows of all time. Thomas, the first half of the 19th century was intellectually fantastic, but the second half began the growth of two of the worst trends in human history, socialism and nationalism. We're still living with the consequence. Yes, Yes, I mean, but I mean, they were both outgrowths of the intellectual movement that started at the end of the 18th century and early 19th century. So they were both outgrowths. Both the nationalism and socialism ultimately came out of Kant. The one, is Hegel. Hegel is the nationalism. But Hegel also leads to Marx, which is the socialism. And, but the whole trend in philosophy in the early part of the 19th century was to take Kant and Rousseau seriously, and Hume's skepticism seriously. So you get Hume's skepticism, Rousseau's adoration for pre-civilized man, for lack of civilization, and really the tribalism, and you get Kant undermining reason together with Hume, and then what you get from that is altruism as a explicitly defined ideology, which is Comte, and you get Hegel, which is nationalism, and Marx, which is communism, and all of the other German romantics, which is various forms of disaster. And ultimately, out of all of that, you get postmodernism. So it's actually the end of the 18th century, which is the beginning of the end, right? It destroys the Enlightenment and sets us in motion for everything bad after that. Whoops, what did I just do? Jennifer says, "You're awesome, Yaron." Thank you, Jennifer. Really appreciate it. Shazbot, just as a add-on from the previous one, that was World War I, yes. Blackadder was implying that the nationalist propaganda being distributed in the trenches was only good for use as toilet paper. Yep, I got that. Thank you. And it's funny, and it's one of the great shows, and that season was particularly good, and a huge critique of the war and of the kind of the people, the aristocratic structure of British society, the generals in the background sending young men to their deaths for what? To achieve what? In the name of what? The king, the flag, the nation. So it's very much a critique of war and a critique of nationalism, and really well worth watching. I highly recommend Blackadder, all of the seasons, but I'd say in particular this last one. Richard, thanks for discussing the Social Security yesterday. I pay an effective tax rate of about 10% on my Social Security benefits. I pay, not pray. I pay an effective tax rate about 10% of my Social Security benefits. I foresee that rate going up because the government believes I'm rich. Yeah, and the benefits coming down because they believe you're rich. I think, something has to give. Something has to give. All right, Hunter. Hunter came in with $100. Thank you, Hunter. Hunter says, Einstein published his Discovering the Photoelectric Effect, Brownian motion, mass energy equivalence, and special relativity in a single year. Here's to my own miracle year and yours. Yeah, how old was he? He was like in his 20s, and he was working as basically a clerk in the patent office. So here's a guy with a full-time job in the patent office. And in 1 year, he completely revolutionizes physics and writes, 1, 2, 3, 4 major, revolutionary articles. Just unbelievable. Unbelievable. He was 26. We're not going to call it a miracle year, but an amazing, fabulous, outstanding achievement year. You should all have at least one of those. But yeah, Einstein is going to be hard to match. Thank you, Hunter. $100. I really, really appreciate that. All right. We are back to Michael. Is Trump immune to bad press? his minions are just too devoted. Well, no, I mean, he gets bad press all the time. I mean, the press is constantly after him. Indeed, he does so many things that upset people. The biggest issue is that the press can't keep up with him, with all the bad things he does. But his minions are too devoted. That is, they're not affected by the bad press. But it's only the minions. And the number of minions is shrinking. It's not growing. It's shrinking. I mean, his popularity is tumbling. And if you look at the number of people who supported Trump but are horrified, for example, by this Iran deal, yeah, it's growing. Although there are people out there. There is a loyal group of MAGA who will defend even this complete insanity that Trump is going to be signing soon. So it's some people truly have Trump zombie syndrome. They truly are brain dead and just follow everything Trump does and agree with it and support it and cheer it on. Micah says, if you could live forever, would you? If you could stay at 25 years old forever, could you see a downside? No, I mean, I don't know what forever means. I mean, somebody could shoot me, I'd still die. But if I could rejuvenate my body to be 25, but constantly do that without degrading my knowledge base, my mind, then yeah, I would do that. I would do that. Yeah, 25. I was in good shape. Why not? Why not? I mean, I think late 20s is physically you're at your peak. And if you can bring your brain with you, that is, if you can keep all the knowledge there, then yeah, I mean, I'd love to have the physique, the physical capabilities of a 25-year-old. Yeah, I mean, I might have been stronger later in life, but just in terms of flexibility and joint health and ligaments and God, there's so many little things that you could do at 25 that you can't do at my age. And even at 40, you're starting to slow down. Your metabolism slows. I mean, clearly my metabolism slowed at 40. So yeah, I would definitely, 25, not a bad age to choose. Not a bad age to choose. Roman, have you ever thought about how digital asset tokenization could internalize market externalities? I mean, look, all digital asset tokenization is a distribution of property rights. So it doesn't really internalize market externality. I mean, unless the digital asset to begin with was not private. As long as the digital asset is private, then there are no externalities. The externality is already internalized. So you'd have to be more specific. Give me a scenario where that is the case. Real Spark, please talk about Jerry Seinfeld saying Palestine doesn't exist. Also, if communism is destructive, then how did Soviet Union make subway space program, etc.? Yeah, so Jerry Seinfeld is right. There's no such thing historically as a Palestinian people. A Palestinian state never existed in all of human history. There's never been a Palestinian state. The area that is Palestine or Israel was occupied, by the Jews way back, and then by the Greeks, and then again by the Jews, and then by the Romans, and then by the what do you call them? By the Egyptians, and then by the Byzantines, and then by the Arabs, and then by the Ottomans, and then by the British, and then there was the state of Israel. So there's never been a Palestinian state in that area. Never been a Palestinian autonomous area. None of that ever existed. So there is no such thing as a Palestinian state in history. But that doesn't mean you can't create one. So to me, to say that saying that Palestine doesn't exist doesn't help anything, right? Here are people who identify as a particular people. All right, what do you do with that is the question, right? Are you advocating for freedom? Are you advocating for protecting the rights of those Palestinians? Are you advocating for establishing a state that would protect the rights of Palestinians? Okay, then there's a basis for discussion. But if you're sustaining a barbaric morality, a barbaric philosophy, ideology, then there's no meaning to a Palestinian state. Okay, we get another state that oppresses its people. There's no value in it. There's no purpose in it. So historically, he's right. Practically, the only thing that gives a state meaning is the extent to which it protects individual rights. If communism is destructive, how did Soviet Union make subway space program, etc.? Yeah, because even if you have, let's call it, for the sake of a bad metaphor, but let's call it a shrinking pie, you can still redistribute within that pie. So, for example, you can lower people's standard of living, take money away from whatever it is that they're producing, and they're producing something a little bit, and you can pour it into building pyramids. In other words, a subway station. Or you could pour it into a space program, which you can't afford, but you can take people's money and build it. But on net, standard of living, quality of life in your country is going down. You're killing millions of people. That's a pretty much a lowering of standard of living. Death is about as low of a lowering of standard of living as you can get. Right? Yeah, it's a redistribution. Redistributions can be done. Now, if you actually look at what they did, is a lot of the engineering that went into the so-called big achievements that the Soviet had, like the subway, were done with foreign engineers that they brought in. Because they didn't have the knowledge locally. A lot of the development of the oil industry in the Soviet Union, a lot of the development of the subway system, a lot of others were foreigners who were brought in order to facilitate it, and it was just a matter of money and labor, and money and labor can be redistributed from other things to that in order to create pyramids. The pharaohs built pyramids, even though ancient Egypt was a destructive society. And ultimately, the Soviet space program was like the pyramids. It didn't produce any wealth. I mean, at least Apollo, which is ultimately, materially a net negative, maybe it motivated people. But at least the technology developed during Apollo was used ultimately to develop computers and all kinds of other things. In the Soviet Union, it was a dead end, never went anywhere. They didn't develop a tech industry because of the space program, whereas the US did, because the US privatized it all. It's also true that the Soviet space program was all built on stolen tech, stolen knowledge, just like their nuclear program. They had to steal the stuff from the Manhattan Project. Michael, why is the subway in Moscow so much nicer than New York City? Well, I'm not sure it is. There's a couple of stations that are really nicely built, and that the state spends a lot of money to keep maintained because it's a showpiece. And New York City, because again, it's owned by the state, it's also owned by the state. It has chosen, instead of to maintain the subway, New York City has chosen to hand it out to homeless people, and to spend the money on rent control, and to spend the money on welfare and all kinds of weird redistribution programs. New York has the money to make the subway system beautiful. We just have to stop, wasting it on other things. Or it could just return it to the original people and privatize the subway, and the subway would be a lot nicer. So there are a couple of stations in Moscow that are nice. I mean, I remember when Washington, D.C. opened their subway system. It must be in the 70s. It was gorgeous. It was really, really, really nice. It's beautiful. It just hasn't been maintained because they choose to use the money for welfare. And the Russians choose to use the money for maintaining the station, so that when Tucker Carlson goes there, he can go, whoa, this is so nice. This is such a better country than America. Real Spark says, please say something about Karmelo Anthony's trial. Yeah, I mean, I was going to talk about it on Monday. I've looked into it some. I can't say I'm an expert on everything that happened, but it seems, and look, a trial was held. The jury ruled. There's no reason to believe that the jury was completely skewed, although lots of people are claiming it was. This was at a track meet. I guess it started raining, and a black athlete from one school trying to go under a tent of another school, and a white athlete kind of started pushing him out of the tent. The black athlete, Karmelo Anthony, pulled out a knife and stabbed the guy, and stabbed him in such a way that killed him. Right? He stabbed him, I think, through the heart, and he killed him. He's on trial for murder, and clearly killed him. I mean, nobody's disputing that. Clearly had a knife on him, which is very questionable to bring a knife to a athletic competition. I mean, this is very similar to the case in some ways, to the case we just had in the UK, where shoving and pushing turns into one party stabbing the other. I don't know if so Karmelo Anthony claimed self-defense. He claimed he feared for his life, but the jury didn't believe that, and the testimony, there was no testimony that really in any significant way validated that. Again, they were shoving, and kids fight. Fights happen. And but you don't pull out a knife in a fight. You maybe you punch the guy, or you shove him back, or you run away. But you don't pull out a knife. That's now if 10 people are after you, then you do it. But there was no evidence presented in trial that 10 people were after him. So it seems pretty clear cut to me that he stabbed the guy, and it's not a racial issue. It's straight out he killed him. Now again, there are people out there saying evidence was suppressed. There was a bunch of people ganging up on him and they were attacking him, and this really is self-defense. Again, no evidence at trial was presented, as far as I can tell, to justify that, and the jury certainly didn't think that. I still generally, not always, believe in, don't view myself as in a better position than the jury if I haven't heard all the evidence. I mean, you could question the jury in the O.J. Simpson trial because every one of those sessions of the trial were broadcast, and we all had access to the evidence, and we all could make up our own mind. Here we don't have it, right? The fact that the family raised $600,000 on GoFundMe, I mean, I don't see that as a problem one way or the other. I mean, look, it's a tragedy. This kid lost his temper, sadly had a knife on him, which made that temper express itself in pulling a knife. I don't think he had an intent to kill. He probably was he lost his temper and he stabbed the guy, and he didn't think, right? He didn't think. And people want to make sure he got a decent defense, which the parents did use to get a good defense lawyer, and they did. So I don't have a problem with them raising money. I don't have a problem with people sending the money to make sure he got a good defense. They're not wealthy people, and having a defense, you don't want a public defender in a murder trial. You want to be able to get the best that you can find. Completely understandable. So I have no problem with that. What I do have a problem with is all the people who are turning this into a racial issue, and it's primarily those minorities claiming this is all racism and the trial was racist and the verdict is racism, and he got 35 years. I haven't looked it up. I was going to look up, let me just ask ChatGPT what that means in terms of how when he could get on a parole in Texas on a murder 35-year sentence. How soon can a perpetrator get out? I'm curious to just compare it to the UK. She got 35 years. We'll see what ChatGPT comes back from in terms of, so he's eligible for parole in 17 years, which just shows you that, the British, he's eligible for parole after 21 years. So it's not that big of a difference, right? It's not that big of a difference. It's about the same. The cases are very much the same. And in the case of England, the guy was being harassed by being filmed, which I think was inappropriate. But then he took the phone, which was wrong of him to take the phone. And then there was shoving, and then he pulled out a knife and stabbed, because shoving turns into a stab. It turns out it's half, so it's 17 and a half years. He's eligible for parole in 17 and a half years. What puts him in the same ballpark as 21 years or 22 years that the guy in England got. So it's very much the same. Then the question is, the other thing is that, the white supremacists have also used this as an excuse to go after his family, to make racial points about this and so on. It's two teenagers, and teenagers get into fights. I got into fights when I was a teenager. The tragedy here is that A, one had a knife on him, and B, that given that, he used it. 17-year-olds shouldn't have knives on them, because in the heat of the moment, it's hard to resist. And it's very easy to exaggerate the threat that you think you're under. Very easy. And to perceive it as self-defense in your own mind. Kim says, I've been responding to some of the anti-trillionaire posts telling these people to start doing something with their own life so they can be successful, and they end up getting mad at that also. Of course, they don't want to. And maybe they are doing something meaningful with their life. It's just not measured in dollars, they will tell you. And why do we have to measure everything in dollars? And, why can't I just why do I need to work for a living? Why can't I just do what I like doing? Why can't I just pursue my hobbies? Give me a break. Yeah, the mentality of these people is unbelievable. They really think that they deserve to be fed and clothed and supplied with an iPhone just because they're born, because they exist. Lone Descender says Rowan Atkinson is also, this is from Rowan Atkinson from Mr. Bean and from the show we talked about earlier. He also says he strongly defends free speech. Yes, I've seen a number of his videos. They're excellent. He is a great defender of free speech. Really, really good. Really, really enjoy it. Troy from Australia has just come in with 500 Australian dollars. Thank you. Troy just made my day. We are blown away. We've blown through our target. That is fantastic. Thank you. Blackadder, of course. I mentioned Blackadder. That is the show. Troy, thank you. It's great to see you. Great to see you here. I'm glad you're enjoying the show. All right, let's see. We got two last questions. Lone Descender says, what's your view on using VPN to see shows and movies that streaming platforms don't make available in your true location? Well, it depends, right? So if you've paid for the service, like when I travel, I paid for Netflix. Why shouldn't I be able to access it? So I'm fine with using a VPN in those circumstances. For example, in Puerto Rico, some things are blocked in Puerto Rico, not by the services. They're blocked by, the state and regulations and all kinds of stuff. So, yeah, if I can get around that, I get around that. But I have to pay for it. I'm not going to do it and somehow get something for free. That I think is stealing. Michael says, I disagree that Marxists and the old left had a positive vision of industrial progress and human well-being. I think they always wanted death. Maybe deep down, that's what they wanted, but that's certainly not how their theory presents it. And it's not what they're arguing for. And Marx says some very, very, very positive things about capitalism because he sees what capitalism is doing to the lives of people. He recognizes that, and he just thinks it's a stage in human development. this is where he's Hegelian in a sense of there's an inevitability to history. And he's an economic determinist, and he believes that capitalism is an essential stage. You need that economic development. It gives you economic development. Quality, standard of living does rise. But then there's one that takes us even further, and where we're going to be better off and where we're going to prosper even more. That is his argument. Now, you could argue he knew better, and all of this is motivated by evasion and hatred and envy, and I think there's plenty of reason to believe that. Ultimately, what motivated Marx was a hatred of self-interest. You can see that in his essay on the Jewish question, which I often recommend you all read. But Marxism clearly presents itself as being pro-human flourishing and pro-progress, pro-industrialization. Arguably, they know it will fail, and they preach it anyway, and in that sense, they're pro-death, but that's what their explicit arguments support. All right, thank you, guys. Thank you to Troy. That's great. Really appreciate that. Thank you to Michael, who contributed a lot today. Thank you for Hunter for the $100. And a couple of people did 50s, Stephen and Frank, but thank you to all the Super Chat contributors and all the sticker contributors. Wes also did 50 as a sticker. So thank you, guys. I will see you all tomorrow. I will be here with Nikos to talk about, what are we talking about? We're talking about the left and Islamism, the connection between the left and Islamism. Why do you have gays, for Palestine when they know what happens to gays if they would go to Gaza? Gays for Gaza, gays for Hamas. How does that work? So why is the left and Islamism so connected? That's with Nikos tomorrow, 3 p.m. East Coast time, right here on the Yaron Brook Show. See you then. Bye, everybody.